This is what I see jiu-jitsu athletes struggling with most, and that is scheduling their week so they can fit all their jiu-jitsu training as well as their strength and conditioning. Obviously, we can run into problems if we're redlining all our technical training, hard rolls, and then going to the gym and just lifting heavy, high volume all the time. So it's about scheduling the week where you can allow yourself to recover and get the most out of your sessions. Before diving into the different week schedules, obviously there's a lot of individual variation. There's some caveats with this. Obviously, your work schedule, your life schedule, what you have going on, how many times a week you're training, when in the day you're training, all these things will impact how your week schedule runs. So just for this video, I'm only going to focus on the afternoon or evening jiu-jitsu classes, the ones that's probably the most attended classes. I'm going to start there. I'll do other videos on, for example, training midday or training morning. But for now, this will just be training in the evening. I'm going to offer a few different options within each one. Obviously, they're probably not going to fit exactly how your life schedule works, but I'm going to give a very general overview on how to do this. Before going into a 3-day-a-week schedule, we can cover the 1 and 2 day a week jiu-jitsu athlete. When you're only training once or twice a week, it doesn't really matter where you're putting what, because you're just not training enough for it to matter enough. You'll just fit your general strength and conditioning anywhere in the week where you see fit. Obviously, ideally, you don't want to be doing consecutive sessions or consecutive hard sessions, but when you're in training once or twice a week, it's relatively easy to manage. But once we get into the 3-day-a-week, we start to run into scheduling issues depending on what you're doing in class. Obviously, what you do in class is going to change a lot how the schedule fits, but I'm just going to assume that within the actual class itself is more just technical drilling, and you can roll after class or control how much you're rolling after class. So let's take, for example, you're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday evenings for your jiu-jitsu. That's a relatively regular or common schedule. And in this scenario, I've just put strength training on your off days. Now, is this ideal? Yeah, it's just easy to manage this way. For those of you who work full-time, have other things going on, you often can't go to the gym in the morning and then jiu-jitsu in the afternoon. That will take up your entire day from 5 or 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So you can just place your strength training on your off days. Now, what you do on these days may differ depending on what you're doing at the gym during jiu-jitsu. So for example, here I've shown, okay, Monday and Friday, you might increase the number of rounds you do and the intensity of those rounds. Those might be your harder jiu-jitsu days. So you might do your normal technical class, positional sparring, whatever you're doing, and then after class or near the end of class, you might push harder in those rounds and you might do more rounds. On Wednesday, you might keep it a little more relaxed. You might do your drilling. If there's positional sparring, you do that. But when you're doing your rounds, you might do less rounds and you might do those at lower intensity, playing more defense, allowing your opponent to work more so you're not working so much or going into these hard scrambles. Your strength training then will typically be lower volume depending. If you have this kind of schedule, you might do slightly lower volume on the Tuesday here because you did hard rounds, and do slightly higher volume on the Thursday before going into your heavy rounds there. There's no perfect way of doing it. You just have to play around with how you kind of schedule this out. These two should be full body strength sessions. So you're not just hitting upper and lower, then you're at least getting 2 days a week working those different muscle groups. You also have the weekend. I left the weekend out just in case for anyone who doesn't like to train on the weekends, but you also have that option. You can move your strength training to Saturday. If you need to do extra conditioning, that could be done on a weekend, for example, on a Saturday. If you cannot train those days, they can be done after class, or even some kind of shadow wrestling warm-up 5, 10, 15 minutes before class for jiu-jitsu is another way to fit that in. And often it's not about trying to carve out other times in the day. It can be as simple as an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes before or after class, being able to get that conditioning in, especially when you're on a busy schedule. So now I've got the 4-day-a-week schedule, training jiu-jitsu in the evening. Now I typically train jiu-jitsu 4 times a week, but during the midday class, but I'm going to show you my schedule and how that runs, and it can be easily translated to if you're doing evening classes. This is how I found it work best for me. I'm lucky enough where sometimes I can train twice a day if I'm doing gym and jiu-jitsu, but you've also got other options if you can't. And this is how I see the jiu-jitsu running in terms of intensity and volume. I've got the arrows, up arrow meaning it's a harder jiu-jitsu day, down arrow meaning it's an easier day. So for example, Monday will be technical class and I'll roll a couple more rounds or at higher intensity. Tuesday for me is typically a leg lock class, and that's a little more chilled there in terms of drilling and what I'll do afterwards. So that will be an easier day. Thursday, again, more escapes classes. So an easier day and I'll roll less rounds. Then Friday is more just positional work for an hour. So that's more of a harder day. So what I'll do is I'll typically sandwich a harder strength day between Tuesday and Thursday. That makes it easy to move in an undulating fashion. High, low, etc. Monday morning, typically I like to do some kind of strength stuff. You'll find in jiu-jitsu and grappling sports, you can do strength training before you get on the mat. It's almost like an extended warm-up, as long as you're not doing something stupid like 20 sets of chest and that's all you're doing. If you're doing a full body strength power session, for example, you might be doing some kind of jumps, some kind of Olympic lifting or weightlifting derivative, maybe some low volume, heavy lower body work and some low volume, heavy upper body work. You're going to feel good going on the mats most of the time. So this is one option. Then obviously if the weekend is optional, if you want to do some extra cardio, strength, whatever it is you want to do. If you cannot do this kind of double day work in the most of the day, you can't fit that in your schedule. You can move this to the weekend. You could even fit that extra day on the weekend, or you can move it over if you're freer on Fridays to do it somewhere like that, or you can just keep it the one strength day here as your option. Sometimes you just have to go with what you have available. And if you only have that one spot to do your strength training, that's where you'll do it and you'll continue with your 4 days a week jiu-jitsu here. Obviously, you still have Saturday and Sunday. Sunday's another good day. You can do some strength training or conditioning before heading into the week as well. It's more so, not so much about how often you're training. It's more about undulating the intensity and the volumes that you're training at. If you're beasting yourself in the gym, then it almost doesn't matter how you're trying to schedule this. You're just going to be so dead that you're not going to be able to do your jiu-jitsu technical sessions properly, especially if you're coming in, you're doing hard rolls Monday, hard rolls Tuesday, hard strength session Wednesday, hard rolls Thursday, etc. It's just not sustainable and you will feel broken. And I've been there and done that where I was training in a gym where it was almost hard rolls every session that I was there, and it takes it out of you. It makes the strength training harder. Your body doesn't feel good, and it's just being able to manage that intensity and volume that will make the difference in your training week. These schedules get harder as you're training more jiu-jitsu. So for example, this will be a 5-day a week. You're training Monday to Friday evenings jiu-jitsu. For you to be able to fit extra strength conditioning training in, you either need to do your strength training on the weekend, which depending on your work-life schedule, if that's possible, most of the time it is. So that would be the better option. I'm going to give the option where it's just Monday to Friday, just to show you how that might work. And if you did this, you would have to double day. There's no way around it. And what you want to do to be able to do this is you want to place your gym or strength power training on the same days you're doing your hard, high volume, high intensity rolling. And you want to do this because you want to have that undulation, as I mentioned, on the 4-day-a-week schedule. You want to have the undulation of higher workloads, higher intensity, higher volumes, and then come back down into easier days. And this will allow you to recover between those efforts. It will also allow you to produce essentially high outputs or high quality trainings on those days that are higher intensity. And that's the whole idea of it. So in this example, we've got Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as the high intensity days. Now, this might be too much for some of you. For some of you, that might be a lot for your body to handle. In that case, you would only do Tuesday and Thursday as your higher days, and these other days would be a little lower. Obviously, there's some things that are out of your control depending on the gym you're training at. But this is just a best case example if you were able to manipulate it. Then you would do your strength training, strength power training, Monday and Wednesday morning on your 2 high days, leaving Friday free. Or if you had the time and the energy, you could do some of your conditioning there. This would be something you can use essentially to still get your strength training in while training 5 days a week. If you had a competition coming up and you are more serious, if you're training 5 days a week, you're probably a more serious competitor. In that case, you could add low intensity conditioning on these lower days too. So it could be strength, con, as an example. And these would be low intensity so they don't impact your recovery and they don't impact the technical training in the future. Obviously, we still have the weekend here too. We can spread that out so we're not doing double days all the way through. Because double days all the way through can be exhausting depending on what you're doing. So you might even move some of these conditioning sessions to the weekend, or even some of the strength to the weekend. Again, this might not fit your schedule, but this will be I guess a best case scenario schedule for someone who is training 5 days a week. So this is an example of a 6-day-a-week schedule. This would be for someone who's changed their lifestyle to be able to train or dedicate more time to jiu-jitsu, probably someone who's competing regularly or looking to make it to a higher level in jiu-jitsu. So the undulation changes slightly with Storm because we have a Saturday session and it's on a Saturday. Typically it'll be on a Saturday morning, but because we would have Sunday off, Saturday is now the harder day, which changes everything coming back. So Friday is now an easier day, then Thursday and Tuesday will be our higher intensity, high volume days where we also have our strength training in the morning. Monday would be our easier day, and so is Wednesday. Now, the reason I haven't put a lot of conditioning in these different week schedules is because it kind of depends on what's happening in your jiu-jitsu classes. There's so many different ways jiu-jitsu classes are structured that I don't know if you're getting much within the class or not. So if you're not, you might need to add some extra sessions if you are competing. If you're not competing, then I wouldn't worry about it, which is why I've also added here on the Saturday, you're doing your hard jiu-jitsu morning plus some hard conditioning directly afterwards. Because you have the rest of the day and the full Sunday to recover, we can push the volume and intensity on this day much higher than any other day in the week. Whereas our Tuesday and Thursday will be our hard jiu-jitsu days, but we'll also do our strength and power in the morning. What those strength power days look like, I mentioned earlier in the video, it should be some form of lower volume, higher intensity work. Depending on your needs as well, you may need to do some kind of hypertrophy bodybuilding style exercise. If that was the case and you lacked in that area, you can add a little bit in here, but I would probably advise doing a third strength session if you're not training 6 times a week, that is. If you're training less jiu-jitsu a week, I would add a third strength session that's more bodybuilding orientated. But that's another story completely, and that would be, you would essentially be focusing on that over the jiu-jitsu training, if that makes sense. But coming back to the 6-day-a-week schedule, this is a simple way you could do it, making sure that you're pairing the higher intensity strength training and power training with the higher intensity jiu-jitsu days, the low intensity days as is. Again, higher intensity days probably look like more positional sparring, harder rounds, scrambles, more rounds, longer rounds, all that kind of stuff. The low intensity days will probably just consist of things like drilling, flow rolling after class, working those different positions. If you are rolling less rounds, not rolling as hard, letting your opponent work more, things like that, so you're not having too much wear and tear on the body as you get to the next day. If this was helpful for you, please let me know in the comments. I want to do one of these also for midday classes, morning classes, different training schedules. If you have a training schedule maybe you're struggling with, you can throw that in the comments too, and I might look to chuck it up here as well. If there's any other topics, let me know also in the comments, but please like, subscribe, and also check the links in the description. There's some freebies down there and also a link to the community.